So let's talk about some stuff right away. Let's talk about some foreign policy, because we haven't talked about foreign policy in a long time, and there's a lot of stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
Ever since Bibi Netanyahu was one of the first to congratulate Joe Biden on winning the election, they also started ramping up their bombing of Syria.
Mm-hmm.
We thought there was going to be an exodus out of Syria. Donald Trump was only staying behind to keep the oil, I guess, because he feels that we're entitled to other countries' oil. I mean, it's one thing I couldn't stand about Donald Trump. He's like, they left Iraq. I told them they should have kept the oil. They gave it like it was ours to begin with.
Right.
This is the part of the foreign policy I do not appreciate of Donald Trump, and there's a lot of things like that. We haven't had a solid foreign policy president since friggin' maybe Eisenhower, and he had questions, fam.
Yeah, exactly. So what's going on?
Well, with ahead of Joe Biden's inauguration, there seems to be a lot of build-up now back in Syria, including what we saw over here. The Ruskies are starting to send battleships, planes, more things over to more hardware, Russian hardware, over to the Syrian area in the Med and whatnot. We saw, I think it was a couple days ago, about a week ago, a Syrian girl put up, a couple people put up. Dick Medhurst talked about it. They were bombing Damascus.
Yeah,
Israel.
they were bombing Damascus, and they were doing this when all of this stuff was going down at the Capitol. So, of course, nobody was paying attention to Syria getting bombed because, number one, we never pay attention to the Middle East. Number two, everybody was distracted by the Capitol and talking about, oh, cool, an insurrection and blah, blah, blah. Well, this is what we do. This is what Israel does. And Israel is our ally, of course, and we fund and give them weapons. So, obviously, we are involved in this, and now the tensions are ramping up. Right as Joe Biden is going to come in his new administration and take over the presidency, we're seeing Russia send in ships, sending in hardware, like Pasta said, and the U.S. is also doing that. Why? Well, I spoke to Vanessa Vili a few weeks ago, and she was telling me that people are actually more afraid of a Joe Biden presidency in Syria than they were with a Donald Trump presidency, because they know that the Biden administration is going to have a more cryptic, targeted drone strike type of mentality where they're going to sanction more and do it on the DL. Of course, the mainstream media will not be talking about it. So therefore, they were able to build up some independent like survival mode of living in Syria. But now with the Joe Biden administration, you're going to see a pro-democracy stance on trying to remove certain people from Syria.
Once again, Donald Trump didn't pull the trigger completely in getting everybody out of Syria. He was trying at one point, at least, but he still said he was going to sit there, occupy the oil. It was definitely more aggressive. A Biden campaign is going to be more progressive when it comes to bombing and whatnot. Guys like Anthony Blinken, who were mad at Joe Biden because Joe Biden wasn't enthused enough about going into Syria or Libya or whatnot.
Joe Biden or Trump?
No, Joe Biden back in the day.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking about when Blinken was was part of the Obama registration. He was mad at Joe Biden for not being enthused enough about going into Syria. And, but it's okay because Blinken does a commercial or does the Sesame Street with Grover and shows you that he's a nice person. So that's that. Dan Cohen, Israeli military, the AKA ISIS Air Force, launched a series of airstrikes on Syria, killing 57 anti-ISIS fighters from the region. Israel and the U.S. are determined to continue murdering the fighters who defeated the ISIS caliphate. So, once again, like we said, Bibi right away. He was one of the first to congratulate Joe Biden, and the attacks just started coming, fam. Here they are. And you want to also talk about some of the war criminals that he continues to... Did I put this up there? Prop up, yeah.
So Biden actually nominated
there it is.
Samantha Power to lead the USAID. The USAID is basically the CIA. It is a CIA front spreading pro-democracy rhetoric. Now, before she was a former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, and this USAID stands for the United States Agency for the International Development. And the transition team also said that Biden actually plans to position her to become a member of the National Security Council in his administration. Now, she is known for being a very pro-war in Libya. She is known for actually having a lot to do with what happened in Libya and for her disastrous foreign policy. And I want to point out a couple of things here that she did before serving as ambassador to the UN. She served as former President Barack Obama's National Security Council as a senior director of multilateral affairs and human rights. And Max Blumenthal reminded us, because he wrote the book, The Management of Savagery. And he said, having destroyed Libya and helped bring slavery back to Africa, Samantha Power reaps her reward. A longtime CIA front, USAID, she'll weaponize right-wing fanatics to destabilize Venezuela, Hong Kong, Syria, anywhere the U.S. seeks regime change. This has nothing to do with aid. Again, and so when you put along what's going on in Syria right now with the Russians putting their military there and the U.S., you're going to see the pushback from Russia and their allies and us and our NATO-backed allies, because this has everything to do with it. And if you guys want to watch a couple of minutes of what they said, the Biden-Harris presidential transition team said, a leading voice for humane and principled American engagement in the world. She will rally the international community and work with our partners to confront the biggest challenges of our time. In other words, we're going to see a lot of sanctions, drone strikes, a lot of coups, fucking coups. And let's just hear a little bit of the rhetoric before I throw up.
Fam,
so
she's
we
rallying.
can't hear all of it. Because, yeah.
I've asked Ambassador Samantha Power to serve as the next administrator of the U.S. Agency for International Development. There is simply no one better to ensure our development agenda is a core pillar of our foreign policy.
Our security is connected to the security of people who live elsewhere. Many of the issues that we in the United States are grappling with, the pandemic, economic crisis, climate consequences, threats to the rule of law, and even to democracy, these are issues that people all around the world are grappling with as well. The United States has a chance to partner with and support people who are on the front lines in battling COVID, who are trying to build climate resilience, who are standing up for the rule of law, standing up against inequality, and trying to create more just societies.
Sam is one of our country's most respected voices on humanitarian issues, and I've seen both her passion and her principles firsthand.
All right.
Okay.
That's enough.
That's enough.
I can't.
You guys get the
can't.
point. I just also wanted to point out this tweet from Kevin Gostola from November, where he was going over the individuals in the Biden administration. I know we did some of those too, but he went through a very thorough unraveling of them. And he pointed out Samantha Power, who was a U.S. permanent representative to the UN under Obama. As we said, prior to that, she was a special assistant and senior director. Like we said, she is known for popularizing the, quote, responsibility to protect military doctrine. And if you go down, like we said in Max Blumenthal's book, The Management of Savagery, he described Power as a celebrity icon of military humanism. She weaponized human rights and perfected a method of masking imperial designs under the cloak of genocide prevention. Exactly. So under the cloak of humanitarian aid and pro-democracy, she masked coups and, of course, overthrowing of legitimate governments. Power was one of the most forceful voices in regime change in Syria. So you're going to see that come up as Biden takes the presidency. Jeffrey Goldberg for The Atlantic documented how Obama grew irritated with her lobbying. Quote, Samantha, enough, I've already read your book, end quote. And she also wrote A Problem from Hell, An Education of an Idealist. The first book was used to justify the war in Iraq. And as John Carl Baker noted in his review of Education of an Idealist, she opposed asking Congress for authorization of war in Syria as well. So she was one of the leading voices of having that power superseded. And then on Libya, which is one of the most important criticisms of her, she contended that whatever our sincerity, we could hardly expect to have a crystal ball when it came to accurately predicting the outcomes in places where the culture was not our own. And of course, she obviously has a lot in common with these neocons like Pompeo. So when people are saying things like Joe Biden's picks aren't that bad, when you're saying things that Joe Biden's national security picks, I think Aaron Maite even said that, and you're saying things like it could be worse, actually not really, because with Trump, you get Trump as a president blatantly saying, oh, we're going to go after these people, we're going to take their oil. With Joe Biden, you get, we're spreading democracy and we're going to bring humanity to our allies and restore the prosperity of our nation. You get all this bullshit, but behind the scenes, it's a lot of death and destruction, and the mainstream media is not going to cover it.
No, and you know, they paint it as this beautiful way to kind of just further infringe upon these countries and just enact more war, you know, more occupation, more money for the military-industrial complex. And all of his picks are just awful. I mean, they really are neocon-minded, just warmongers. Anthony Blinken, Samantha Power, General Lloyd Austin, all these people, you know what I'm saying? General Lloyd Austin, you know, led in the whole campaign to sell bombs, give more bombs to Saudi Arabia, which killed so many Yemenis. I mean, and he's on the board of friggin' Raytheon. And that's who's coming back. They're actually more of a warmonger, I think, than some of Donald Trump's cabinet positions and stuff. Not to say that they are good by any way, shape, or form, but like you said, fam, it's more cryptic. They put more roses around it and stuff, and therefore they can do more damage that way. I believe the enemy that you know and you understand their bullshit in front of you, you can identify and say, okay, I know that guy's not with me. We went on the same ideology, but the people like the Democrats who act like they're for the working person and they're for ending wars and they're, you know what I'm saying, they can do much more damage, especially when people don't follow policy.
They're duplicitous.
Yeah. And big words.
And I just want to point out Glenn Greenwald, because he's been on point with a lot of these things really lately, and he's also been smeared as a right-winger. He said, this is a good choice in the sense that as the head of the USAID, an agency ostensibly devoted to assisting other countries, Samantha Power can work to repair the damage to all the countries she helped destroy the last time she was in government with her unhinged militarism. So I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. I mean, in describing who she is, fam. And like, Johnny, if you go back to the first article, I do want to point out these warships, this tweet that Russia's Syria campaign, the Russian Navy, BM, I think that's a Cigna project, Black Sea Fleet, landing ship brigade Tapir. It's a NATO alligator. And then you can see that these are the ships that were en route to the Russian naval base in Tartus, and that's closer to Syria. So you see that these ships, this is what they're arming themselves, and they're getting ready for a very, very obvious move to destabilize Syria even further, like we've been doing for the last few years. Something to watch. And of course, I know we're going to have a lot of our progressive friends really beyond that. So.